wandering all over this room. Maybe I'll say what you're needing. You won't take back your pleading, and the sun will shine through. Tell me your story. When that keeps me falling asleep at your own. Maybe our hearts will stop mourning, 'cause tragedy's boring now that I found you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a hopefully interesting stream. I was struggling with ideas of what to do for today's Touchline Talk at 2 on Tuesday. As you guys know, that's the current drill. We do Touchline Talk at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays and also Fridays. I was trying to have a think about what would be interesting to discuss today. What value could we provide to the viewer, you guys, today? Because there's only so much that we can do talking about, are City going to sign Shirky? Are we going to sign Reinders? It's not... I don't find that interesting to talk about. We are probably going to sign them. I don't know what else to say. But what we could do is have a chat, have a discussion on exactly and specifically where do these players actually logistically fit in to how City might want to play and set up next season. Now, I'm going to preface all of this by saying I'm not Pep Guardiola, despite my, the fraud feature, the fraudiola bald feature. I'm not this man over here. So I don't know what he's going to do next year. In fact, there was a question, in in the most recent Ask Nobbins video, which uploaded yesterday, every single Monday, by the way, saying, why did Pep abandon the treble winning system, And my answer to that was, in part due to an over-reliance on a player like John Stones, who's always injured, but also Pep is a manager who constantly innovates for the sake of innovating. He didn't even play that treble-winning system in the Champions League final, for example, so it's more than just the personnel weren't there for it. It was also he just wanted to change the setup. So I'm going to try my best today to try to have a think about where City's best players could potentially all play at the same time and it make a lot of sense. But again, I've got to caveat all of that by saying I don't know exactly what Pep's going to do. But I'll be trying my best. And we're going to find out with different systems, different personnel, what are the positives, what are the negatives. But obviously the focus is going to be on those new signings, but new potential signings. Ait Nori, who's in the thumbnail today, Reinders, Shirky, maybe Gibbs White as well. Of course, the emphasis will be on how could they be incorporated, what are they bringing to the table, and how might City set up next season, and how would I like them to set up? Because we'll go through a few teams. I'll go with what I think Pep will do, how I would like it to be, and maybe what's like a balance in between, because what I want is probably not realistic, even though I do genuinely think it would be the best thing to do, but we'll have to wait and find out. Hopefully that sounds interesting to you. I've got my tactics board ready. We will go to that camera over there in a moment, but let me just catch up on the old chat and see how we're all doing today. Good evening, Dego. How you doing? Jamie says, yo. Adash says, LB's live. You should have started the stream later. Nope, because it's Touchline Talk at 2. If I started the stream later, it would be Touchline Talk at 3. And it's always 2 p.m. on Tuesdays. That does not change. That's not changing. Naveen says, how have you been? Doing all right. I failed an exam. Oh, I'm very sorry to hear about that, Naveen. Hopefully you can pass it next time. Hello, Janko. How are you? 6:30 over here, so good time to stream. Beautiful. I'm not that good, Naveen. Chill. Put O'Reilly at the 10, says KLV. Okay. We'll get into that as well. Don't you worry. Is the wingers era over from now on? Says Jamie. Perhaps. We'll get into the logic there. And hello to Surrey as well. Lovely stuff, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. So, as I say, I've got my tactics board, which I'll go to in a moment. I've just realised I've not even put my other lights on. This is outrageous. I haven't even put the Nobbins light on. How could I? This doesn't want to work. Why won't you work? Come on, there we go. I've got to do that at a certain angle. Get the blue moon on as well. Yes, guys. So, let's go to the tactics board now, shall we? Apologies, my room's a bit of a mess right now. My room. This room, the office, is a bit of a mess right now. I'll explain why. I'm going to press that button, and that should work, I think. Let's go find out, shall we? Oh, yeah. Get in. Hello, guys. Hello. Hello. Welcome. What button do I press to make my face work? There it is. Are we working? Yeah, the technology works. We love to see it. And I can still see your screen. I can still see your comments on another screen in front of me. Yes, guys, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 monitor setup because we're extra over here. Hello, Sarthak. 1, 2, 3, Viva Nori. Oh no, someone did a really good one. I saw it on. I'm so sorry, I can't remember who did it, so I can't credit them. But they said the Nori one should be, you know, I'm horny. It should be Nori. That's actually really good. Right, guys. Hello. So what we have here are my wonderful hands. Now, what we have here is the Manchester City squad. This is what I've also done is I've included the players. Is my board broken? Oh my god, guys, my touchscreen's not working. Okay, we might have to abandon ship because for whatever reason my touchscreen monitor isn't working. The touchscreen aspect is broken. I'm gonna have to look into that. Right, there might be a change of plan. I might have to go over there, and that's annoying. I think I've got to set up this as my main monitor. Yeah. It's worth 30 seconds of admin, isn't it? Give me a second. Let's see if we can figure this out. And we're going to go back over here. Keep your comments coming in. Right. Apologies. I think it's because I recently got a new graphics card and I've not set up what is my main monitor. So therefore it's a little bit confused. So apologies. Let me see if I can do this. Wait, which one is that one? That's number 1. So I may make that my main display. Okay. Oh my god, that's maybe destroyed my entire computer. Yeah, that's not worked. Right. I've absolutely bottled this, guys. For some reason, my touchscreen's not working. I'm going to have to just deal with that off screen. I didn't think that would actually be a problem. And yet here we are. So the joys of working with touchscreens, guys, is a thing, as it turns out. So I apologize. But yeah, it's not going to work. So I'm just going to have to go to my normal tactics board, which is a little bit boring, but it's still fine. It's still fine. It just means I can't use my touchscreen, which is a bit of a shame because I like to use that because it's fun. But there we go. There we go. Right. Where's my mouse? There it is. Yeah, big up. Thank you, guys. Yes, thank you, guys. We recently got to... I don't know how we got to that with all the technological issues this channel suffers, but thank you, guys, so much for that. I know how to do it, Joel. There's a button that I need to press, but I can't remember what it is, and it's also not something that is going to be a quick fix, and it's going to sort of detract from the overall experience. So... let's just ignore that and let's just bring my actual thing back over here, shall we? Actually, yeah. So this is working. There we go. Add Mikasa to this. I don't think so. I don't think so, to be honest with you. So what Stone Stink is doing? Get back on that bench, you little swine. Right. Okay. So let's have a chat then. Can you please go away, Pep? Let's have a chat about, fucking hell. Everything is falling apart. What can City do next season? Why should they do it, etc., etc.? As I'm stalling for time, I am a fraud. Absolutely, I am. Absolutely, I'm a fraud. The hell's going on? Yeah, everything's gone to absolute shit. I'll be so real. Can assist. Right. So... what I'm going to do is something that I feel like the vast majority of lineup creators, or whatever the term is, I'm going to start from off-ball shape, which is not typical, I suspect. I feel like most people don't do that. They instead tend to focus more so on the on ball, and that's fine. However, there are a lot of off ball concerns I have. And I think that should always be the starting point for City. And that's always going to be the starting point for Pep as well. Even though he's obviously a possession-based manager and an attacking manager, his first port of call will always be, right, but does this actually work logistically when we are defending? Is the first thing to note. So that's where I'm going to start. It was indeed LeBron. And that's definitely going to be one of the shapes that we're going to be using. It's very similar to the one that we did on the Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and I totally agree with the principle. So well, first of all, goalkeeper, of course. And actually, this is also what I'm going to do. Before we even consider off-ball shape, I'm going to put in the core of players who are going to start every single game, regardless of what system that I put out here. I think that's actually the best starting point. I don't even necessarily mean our best players outright, although there is some overlap there, but essentially the core group of players who everyone is going to have in their starting 11, essentially no matter what, because of how vital they are. Ederson, obviously our starting keeper, is one of those. Of course he is. It looks like he's staying right now. Echeverry is not one of those players. Get baited, guys. Get absolutely baited. Joško Gvardiol, however, is one of those players. It does not matter on what shape you use, whether you're playing him at left back, whether you're playing him at left centre back, or wherever. Gvardiol is absolutely a core member of any City starting 11, and there should be no debate about that. Ake and Gvardiol are our only two left-footed defenders who are actual defenders, and Ake is always injured, and Gvardiol is that guy, isn't he? So he's obviously got to be in there as well. Haaland is our only true striker, so he's obviously got to get into there as well. That's not really up for debate. Another one is... Where is he? Rodri. Right, now, this is where I'm going to start my first assumption. And there'll be another assumption later, which I'll get into straight after this. For the purposes of this system setup creator tutorial, I've got to have some assumptions here. I'm going to assume that injured players / players who were bad last season or subpar, but we know they are very good, I'm going to assume that they are going to come back and be the players that we know that they actually are. Otherwise, I'm going to struggle with all these different offshoots and paths and going, well, what if that player doesn't come back to full fitness? What if that player doesn't come back to their best form? They're all hypotheticals. I've got to sort of go with what I believe is more likely to happen. And it's a fair and valid point to say, well, what if Rodri comes back and turns injury prone and is actually only like half the man he was? And what if you actually can't justify in starting him because he's always making mistakes or whatever, or he's always injured? Well, that's a different conversation to have. I'm going to assume, for the purposes of this video, that Rodri comes back and is the player that we all know that he is. I'll be applying that same logic to Haaland. I'll be applying that same logic to Foden. I'll be applying that same logic to Diaz, etc., etc., etc. I'm not going off form. I'm going off what I know the player is. I'm not going off injury hypotheticals. I'm going off what I think the player is when they will return. I actually think, though, that realistically, this is actually the end of the true core in respect of what I would do. Now, if we're being practical and we are being a little bit realistic, we all know that Ruben Diaz is also going to be a part of this core situation because he's almost definitely going to be the captain next year. Now, I might actually prefer to see Kusanov sometimes play where Diaz is going. I don't necessarily want to say that Ruben Diaz is definitely going to absolutely be a core starting because I do like the idea of trying to embed Kusanov into this lineup. However, again, we have to be somewhat practical and realistic. Diaz is first of all a very good player, but secondly, he's a part of that leadership brigade. He's probably going to be the captain. He's going to start very consistently, and also Diaz and Gvardiol formed a very nice partnership. So I think with that, that is a practical, realistic core of players that we can't really argue against. So if you don't like Diaz and you want Kasarov to go in there, that's fine. But we do have to be practical and, as I say, realistic, rather than being optimistic and thinking, I want Bar to play, I want Hayes to play, I want Kusanov to play, I want a Kanji to play for whatever reason, or Ake. These players are going to start in every single lineup no matter what. Now, I am actually going to add another player to this, who isn't really a core member because he haven't even kicked a ball for City yet. But for the purposes of what I believe now and deem to be... So we can take this as read, this is the core. I'm now going to add my own personal take on this. A player like Reinders, I believe, is a player who should be starting nearly every single game for City if they are available. I believe that a midfield two of Rodri and Reinders is the best midfield two in the world. I think that. I very much believe that. So every single one of my teams is going to have Reinders next to Rodri. Now, again, this does not, because I know some people are just saying Nico G. That does not mean that Nico can't sometimes play there instead. You guys, hello? There we go. That was weird. Now, this does not mean that you can't have Nico next to Rodri. It doesn't mean if we did sign Morgan Gibbs-White, you can't have Morgan Gibbs-White next to Rodri. It doesn't mean that you can't have a midfield two of Nico and Reinders, or Nico and Kovacic, or Nico and Gibbs-White. But Reinders and Rodri is, for me, the best midfield two that City can muster. I actually don't... Now, here's the thing as well, and that we'll get into this in respect of on-ball. I actually don't think it matters where Reinders plays in the midfield. Technically, he's more of a left-sided midfielder for Milan. I don't care. I think that he's good enough to actually also operate there seamlessly without an issue. But for the purposes of right now, just to make it look pretty, I'm going to pop him there. But that is an incredibly lovely midfield too. I say you got Rodri, who's the best defensive midfielder in the world. Absolutely beautiful. And Reinders is essentially a younger version of Gundogan. We know that Rodri and Gundogan had an unbelievable partnership, certainly in the treble-winning year. A lovely situation had by all. Again, there will be a Reinders analysis video. I'll go into more detail on him then. But there we go. Now, so again, don't get bogged down in the names too much. Nico will play. Morgan Gibbs-White, if we sign him, would play. Kovacic, if he stays, would play. There would be rotation. It's fine. It's not a problem. But these, for me, are like the two. That should be our starting point, really. I hope so. I hope so. Think about the upgrades there as well. We've gone from Kova Gundo or Kova Bernardo to these two lads. That is the upgrade is insane, right? And now another player, sorry, or rather players who I think that City should be looking to get into the side as much as they can, is Foden. Where is he? Where is Marmoush? There he is. Marmoush as well. And ideally, this is why the touchline would have been better, I also think that we should also be aiming to try to get Cherki into the vast majority of starting lineups. And whilst I'm here, we have one left-back option, and that's Ait Nouri. Really. Really. What are the alternatives? Nico O'Reilly, who is a decent player, who is a decent option, but he's not a player who should be starting week in, week out for a side wanting to win the Premier League. That should not happen. We need an upgrade there. That's what Ait Nouri is. For the announcement videos, are you waiting for a here we go for an official announcement? No, Musty, I haven't. I mean, there's like 3 videos to make. I haven't had time to make them all yet, or indeed make one of them yet. Tomorrow, I've got a lot of time dedicated to that. I'll probably start on the Cherki one because that's the one I'm most excited by. I don't know who we're going to sign at right back. However, I do believe we do need to sign a right back. So once again, I'm going to leave that blank. So use your imagination. Maybe it's Singo. Maybe it's Livramento. Maybe it's fucking Gusto. Maybe it's Reece James on the operating table. Use your imagination for the right back. It's not necessarily a problem. Can be Asso if you would prefer. Left back moving to right back. Doesn't really matter. So what we have currently on the left is basically what should be included in every single starting 11 realistically. Now, I need to do everything, Musty. I need to watch them more to be comfortable. I need to finish the script. I need to do everything. But the good news is that my editing process has now gotten much more refined, so I can actually edit a video with less than a day's work. So once it's all recorded, it's actually not that hard. So that's all good. If we don't send right back, who would play there? Probably Nunes, based on our current best options. Once again, if you want Nunes to play there, that's fine. But I'm just putting right back there for now because I don't think it's good enough. I don't think he's good enough right now. So how many players do we have right now? We have 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, I actually think that the best form of City is going to be one that incorporates all 3 of these options into it. Do not fear if you are a Savio/Doku believer, of which I am, by the way. There will be plenty of room for them to play and plenty of games for them to play, and this won't be all of the time. Just trying to construct what I believe would be the best starting 11. Remember, we are currently dealing with the off-ball. We'll get into on-ball in a moment. We're dealing with off-ball first of all, because that's the key. And then from there, if we know the off-ball's fine, we can do basically whatever the hell we want on-ball. It's pretty chill. This is where we need to have, and we discussed it in the Shirky live stream a while ago, this is where we need to have the Shirky conversation. He is not a bad presser. That's the first thing to say. He's not a bad presser. However, he is not an intense presser. What does that mean in real terms? It means that if you are a Pep Guardiola City side, and one of the main reasons as to why you've been able to stay so dominant over however many seasons and years is because you press from the front and you win the ball back quickly, that introduces a potential problem if we are having 2 not particularly intense pressers leading the press. That is a problem. What isn't a problem, however, is the fact that, and I mentioned this in my Ask Nobbins video yesterday, whilst he's not an intense presser, he is nevertheless a measured presser. There is a very big difference between being a good presser and being an intense one. Just because you run around a lot, like a headless chicken, does not mean that you are, by extension, a good presser. Because you might just be running and not blocking off passing lanes. You might not be curving your run. You might be getting to the opponent quickly enough, but if you're not actually, as I say, cutting off a passing lane, then what are you actually pressing for? You're doing it for the sake of doing it at that point. You're just doing it so the crowd, who don't know any better, will go, yeah, he's really working hard for the team. But he's just running for the sake of running at that point. I'm not having a go here, but Savio was a bit guilty of that in his early days for City. There was the game against Brentford, I think it was, where he was just like running straight at the Brentford's defenders, and they would just like play around him because he wasn't really bending his run well enough, or he wasn't blocking off passing lanes well enough. It's something he'll need to improve. I think he will need to get more intense, but it's also safe to say he's never going to be Marmoush. He's never going to be Foden. He's never going to be Savio in respect of his off-ball work. I don't think it's going to happen. The former are more intense pressers, also intelligent pressers, but they also just run around a hell of a lot. I don't think Shirky's ever going to become that. Now, that doesn't mean that he's never going to become more intense. Like we saw Aguero up his pressing levels. We saw Mahrez up his pressing levels. Is he going to do a total escalation? I don't know if that's reasonable to predict. What I'm trying to say here, though, is that I've seen a lot of Manchester City lineups for next season, and their on-ball structure heavily suggests, is the only way it would work, heavily suggests that the front 2 leading the press in a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-4 is going to be Hall and Shirky. Now, I would suggest that that is a bit of a recipe for disaster. Whilst I do believe that Haaland's off-ball critics, I think the criticism is overblown, and I don't think it's fair. I think people say that he doesn't... I think that people overestimate how bad his off-ball work is. But it is safe to say that he isn't Marmoush, and he isn't Foden, and he isn't Savio. You know, there are levels to this pressing game. Do we know what we mean there? In respect of intensity. I don't think you can justify having two up top in a 4-4-2 or indeed a 4-2-4. You could, however, justify having Marmoush and Haaland. You could justify having Foden, Haaland. If you wanted to, depending on shape, you could also justify having Haaland and Savio as well. They all work. That's not necessarily a problem. My other issue with a potential issue, with Cherki in a 4-4-2 anyway, is having. I'm overanalyzing. Well, get off the fucking stream then. This is a fucking analysis channel. Shut up. My potential issue with Cherki in a 4-4-2 off ball is that the wide players at City in a 4-4-2 have so much burden in respect of the off-ball work that they are expected to do. Think of, well, for all of his critics, think of how good Jack Grealish's off-ball work is. Doku has massively improved in respect of his off-ball work. Savio came to City with fantastic off-ball work. It was never necessarily a problem for them, okay? Cherki, we've touched on the lack of intensity, maybe. I don't know if he would be naturally suited to a right midfield in a 4-4-2. So what are the potential solutions? Well, one of them... No, that's fine, Southhacker. He's been told. Oh, this pasta tastes too much like pasta. What are you doing? One of the potential solutions is to play a 4-3-3. So you'd have Cherki, technically, at right wing. How do I know that would work? Well, for all the talk about Kevin De Bruyne's fall off from physicality, etc., and that is a reasonable thing to say. He looked pretty good off ball against Bournemouth. Now there have been some instances where he has been caught out off ball this season, but one of them was not against Bournemouth when he was brilliant off ball. And that is because when you are the right winger in a 4-3-3, there is a lot less of a burden on you because far more burden is placed on the fullbacks who then are expected to jump. Otherwise, for argument's sake, let's just use that as a placeholder. Otherwise, your midfield three is entirely exposed. We saw that against United, where their natural width meant that our midfield three was horrendously exposed. Because you had Bernardo right central midfield, you had Gundogan left central midfield. Bernardo was sort of able to get back and deal with it. Gundogan was not. He was just caught out every single time. Who was it at right wing back that day for United? Was it Mazraoui? I can't recall. Whoever it was on that right side, Gundogan was getting shafted consistently. And that was, again, it's not, was it, again, my brain's forgetting. I think it was O'Reilly who was playing that day. Whoever the left back was anyway, was not pushing up and engaging quickly enough. That's not necessarily a dig at that player, whoever it was. It's just more that new position, new shape, new formation, whatever. So that combination of, I believe it was O'Reilly and Gundogan, meant that... was it Dallo? Thank you, Faisal. It meant that combination of O'Reilly and Gundogan, one who was just not physically able, one who was not maybe tactically able, were able to deal with the combination of Dallo and whoever his central midfield partner would have been, whoever that was that day. Ugarte, Fernandez, as I say, I can't recall, apologies. But whoever it was, that was a constant problem for City. Getting an aggressive fullback who wants to push up and engage is the first thing that we could do to get rid of that potential off-ball 4-3-3 dilemma. Now, I can't actually remember the last time City played 4-3-3 off ball over a season? Does someone know that? I'd be very interested to know that. I actually can't remember, because it's just my memory is not very good, as you guys can tell. But we certainly haven't played it since, I don't even know, basically since Rodri came in. I don't think we've ever really played 4-3-3 in a consistent season since Rodri came into the side. It was more of a 4-1-4-1 when it was Fernandinho, Silva, and Kevin. I don't think it was 4-3-3. I thought it was more of a 4-1-4-1. Might be misremembering there. If you guys can let me know, I'd be interested to know that. But either way, it's certainly something we haven't done consistently for a fair few years. Okay? But there's no reason why it can't work in theory, because we literally have won titles with it. Like, Pep's definitely played 4-3-3 with City. I just can't remember the exact season it happened. It can definitely happen, but what did we actually have those years? We had, Kyle Walker, for example. You guys saying 18-19. Okay, great. I'll accept that. There we go. We actually had competent fullbacks that year. Whatever we think of Delph/Zinchenko, whoever played that year, they actually had a really good season that year. There's no reason why it can't work so long as the fullbacks are correct. So that would be my caveat. I don't think we could play 4-3-3 consistently right now. We could if the correct fullbacks came in. That is a way to circumvent this potential Shirky. I'm not going to say problem, because I don't think that's fair. But it is a concern that I have. Once again, this is not the same as saying he's lazy. It's not the same as saying he's fat or overweight or is a bad presser. But I do have there are some concerns in the current City setup, and I think it is worth changing said setup to accommodate Shirky. That's how highly I rate him, and how much I'm trying to protect him in a way. I don't need to necessarily do the same for Marmoush or Foden or whoever I do for Shirky, but trade-offs. I think it's worth it for a player like Shirky. So what would that mean? Now, I have also seen some people maybe suggest that I'm going to provide another one, sorry. A solution that people have come up with is, right, why don't you just play Foden out on the right off ball? Just play Foden out off the right off ball, play Marmoush off the left off ball, and then play Shirky in like a 10. Now, this, for me, has not solved the problem, because I still need Shirky to be pushing up to help Haaland with the press. So I don't know if I necessarily buy that just doing this off-ball shape has addressed the problem. I think that this has just moved the problem slightly and has just changed the form of it. So I don't know how much I buy this as an off-ball shape. I don't think it necessarily changes I don't think it addresses the problem well enough. Because when City's players push up high, so let's say you've got Marmoush, Foden, Haaland, you're still going to need these three here to also push up. I can't do my boxes. You're also still going to need these three to also push up and engage. And again, whether it's a second striker or whoever, this player is going to have to push up here. And this is sort of leading into what I want to get into next. City tends to press out at either a 4-4-2, or another option is a 4-2-4. Now, if this were to happen, this is another option. I would still prefer Shirky to be pressing from that right side. So you can either have Marmoush and Haaland leading the press, or Haaland and Foden leading the press. I don't think that really matters. But this, once again, protects Shirky. He's used to pressing out from the right wing for Lyon as well. There is less responsibility on him as well. If he's in the centre, he's going to have to do a hell of a lot more work. Whereas, again, compared to the right, there's a bit less burden on him there as well. So that's where I'm at with this off-ball City shape. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Nobbins, if we play Shirky out on the right wing, then isn't that wasting his talents? Isn't that going to be almost like a Foden situation where you don't want to be playing him on the right off ball? Yes. However, this is where the fullbacks come into play. So this is what I would like to see. Now, again, if Shirky improves his pressing, intensity, and if he's able to lead the press with Haaland, then I actually don't care. I actually don't care. And maybe that would work. But right now, I don't like the idea of my press being led by Haaland and Cherki. Because we know that the foundation of City's offensive work and the foundation of all of City's titles has been how brilliant we have been at pressing off ball. I'm sorry I'm spending so much time on this stream off ball, but it's important to discuss it because it gets overlooked. People want to rush to how we're going to set up when we have possession, how is it going to look attacking, and that's fine, but we need to accept that the foundation is off ball. I agree, Pavlo. I agree. And this is why I think that he'd have to do less running if he was played at the right wing in a 4-3-3 or on the right side of a 4-2-4. That's what I'm after. He'd have to do far more running if he was leading the press with Haaland. And if he didn't, then you got two potential not that intense lads in Haaland and Cherki leading my high press. No. We know that we are not the side to back off and allow the other team to have the ball and us defend, really deeply. We do not want to be playing like that. Attacking is the best form of defending. It's easier to defend if you have the ball than without it. We all know that City are going to be a side who defend with the ball than without it. We therefore need to get the ball back quickly. We can do that with intense presses, leading my two in the press. Once again, this all becomes moot if those issues go away. But right now, a combination of Foden Haaland or Marmoush Haaland does work. And again, if you're worried about Savio Doku, I'll address them in a moment. It's fine. So this is what I would like to see as a potential off-ball. Either this, a really intense 4-2-4 press, or what I might like to see is a sort of an actual 4-3-3. That might also be nice. I think both of them work, but for now, I'm just going to do the 4-2-4, just for argument's sake. Again, it doesn't really matter if you've got Reinders there or Foden there. Semantics, okay? Now, how would this work on ball? Because once again, the key is to implement how can we get our best players into their best positions. How can one do that? Well, what does that actually mean? It's also what we do as well sometimes, Yash, to be fair. If we're going particularly aggressive. 4-2-4 has become like a mainstream pressing shape. That's why Pep tried to go with a 3-1-6 to start the season, because that's a great counter to this shape. What are the mandatory requirements? What are my mandatory requirements as to how City set up on ball? I'm happy with this off ball. How can it now work on ball? Indeed, AD, and that's why we've provided a couple options there. What I need is Foden, Cherki, and Marmoush to somehow be in the centre. Now, that doesn't mean outright centre, they have the whole zone and area to themselves. What it does mean is that they find areas on ball where they are able to influence from those central areas. And there can be lots of fluidity and rotations if you like. But my starting point is I need those players to be able to influence the play from the centre of the pitch. That is my mandatory requirement. In order for that to happen, whilst also fielding Marmoush, Foden, Cherki, width has got to come from somewhere, obviously. Otherwise, we'll be left with a situation we had this year where we had like Rico Lewis supposedly being our right winger, and that just did not work at all. Thank you so much, Alex. Yes, we recently got to 25k. Thank you guys so much for all of your wonderful support and help. Next milestone is 50k. I think we can do it. The width comes from the fullbacks. Now, this is bread and butter for Ait Nouri, because he is an incredibly offensive fullback, and we'll get into /wingback. We'll get into potential defensive work in a moment, and why I'm going to outline why I don't think it's too much of a problem. But right now, and don't worry, I've not settled on my central shape. We're just dealing with the wide players for now. The only way that you can realistically justify getting Foden, Marmoush, and Cherki into the centre of the pitch all at once is if you accept that your fullbacks are going to be your widest players. Now, we can have different shapes where I take out Foden, I put in Savio, I take out Cherki, and I put in Doku, whatever. But if we want to get all three of these players into their best positions, and once again, I do, because Marmoush, Foden, Cherki are better than Savio and Doku, in my humble opinion. These are players who we should be looking to try to build around and try to get the most out of. That is what I want. So my width is coming from my fullbacks. This is why it's key to get those signings correct. Haaland's obviously going to be in the centre. I don't care if you want it to be like this, or you want it to be that, or you want it to be that, whatever, semantics. For my setup, this is what I'm going to be doing. Spartacus, thank you so much for renewing your membership, mates. A hardcore ultra for 7 months. This means more than a trophy. Your random player is Roberto Firmino. Big up. Yeah, big up to you, Spartacus. And he says, I've sent you on Discord. Sorry, how about the 2 systems I've sent you on Discord? Also, I heard that subbing to Nobbins on YouTube is 25% off in celebration of 25k. I'll have a look at your shapes in a moment, Spartacus, if you don't mind. I'll just, I don't want to be influenced yet. So, as I say, what I want is a shape where Haaland's allowed to be the striker, obviously. Marmoush is allowed to play as this second striker, so he's allowed to make, big up to you, Onkar, for subscribing. He's allowed to make those runs in behind. So really, once again, this is all nominal. It's almost like a sort, and this is actually Phil Casso's shape as well. I'll get into another one in a moment. So what I've constructed right here so far is like almost like a Germany setup with the 310s, where they had Gundogan and Wirtz and Musiala all in the same team, and the width came from the fullbacks. And Germany in that Euros were very unlucky to play Spain in the quarterfinals. They were easily the second best side in that whole competition behind Spain. So this is definitely a shape that can work. So that's a thing. But realistically, what it might be better to look at to visualize is actually what we've been doing this season. And this is why I think it can work. What we have played... Oh, Jimmy, thank you so much, mate. Big up to you. Thank you for the 14 months as an Ultra. Welcome back to the Ultras Club. I'm excited for next season if these signings happen, says Jimmy, absolutely. And your random footballer is Allison. Big up to you. That's a good poll. It's a good poll. Not quite Edison, though, is it? What 2 Liverpool players back-to-back who are Brazilian? What are the chances? Now, this is what we actually have been playing. Not all season. This is what we have been playing towards the back end of the season. A 4-2-2. So you got Marmoush and Haaland as technically your 2 strikers. Marmoush is that second striker. Foden and Cherki as your double 10s. The width coming from the fullbacks. This is obviously a much better City midfield now because we've gone from Kova, Gundo to Reinders, Rodri. Lovely. The defence is the defence. So this is a potential option as to what City could do. Now, I've seen people in the chat saying, but what about when we lose the ball? Now, of course. Now, what I would say is that we are going to be weak no matter what happens. Unless we sign a player like Baleba, we're always going to have that vulnerability. City will always be vulnerable to counterattacks because we defend with the ball. That is just not... There is no perfect shape or system in football. There will be weaknesses somewhere. If that weakness just happens to be behind the fullbacks, then so be it. KT says we'll get hit hard on transition. I'm telling you now, that will happen regardless of shape. Because that has always been City's weakness. And it will always be City's weakness. It's risk versus reward. Is it worth continuing your weakness in respect of the rest defense, etc.? Is it worth it to be a ridiculous threat on ball? And I would suggest that yes, it is worth it. If we go more defensive, that's fine, but then you are limiting City's offensive thrust and making us work worse offensively. I would rather, in a game like football, where it's goals that win your games, I would rather have a shape which is more offensive and a potential weak defensively than a shape which is focuses a bit more on being defensively solid. That's a good point, well perspective to be fair. I mean, Flick's Barca is even more extreme than this, and they were unlucky to not potentially do the treble this year. I don't think we'd be making the correct call by getting bogged down in focusing on trying to be overly defensive. What I want is to outscore my opponent. I want to dominate them on ball. I want to suffocate them. This is also the key of that 4-2-4 potential press. It's about when you lose the ball, you get it back quickly. Yeah? That's the key as well. This is a potential shape. Let's now try to do what Pep attempted to start the season with. Now, what Pep started the season with, actually, was not how he ended it. He started with a 3-1-6, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but it can absolutely work. Let's get into that now, shall we? How might that work for City? In order for that back three to be created, a defender's got to drop back now. Now, that might be a Kanji, it might be Singo, it might be Simakon, whoever. I reckon Livramento can do a job there at right centre-back as well on ball. So, this was how Pep started the season. This may very well be how he... In fact, do you guys remember when we went through that horrendous run of form, and it was so obvious that we did not have the facilities to play 3-1-6? Pep persisted with it, and he was desperate to try to make it work. I wonder if he will do it again. Do potential scenarios in games. Oh, that's what I'm trying to do, Musty. Yeah. Do you mean like when we lose the ball, etc.? Let me know specifically what you mean. So, how might that work? Well, with that, we could have Rodri at the base. You'd probably have... Well, what would be more realistic there? You'd probably, in that instance, maybe want Cherki at the tip. So again, less burden on him. This is where it becomes it gets a little bit trickier, and this is where a winger is probably more justified, because now all of a sudden it becomes hard to justify having no right-sided presence. This is maybe a situation where Marmoush doesn't play, because we need some threat on that right side. We need a right winger in this setup. This is a potential shape where Marmoush doesn't play, but a winger does play, like Savio. It would also work the other way round. So instead of it being, Savio there, you could have... Where's Doku gone? You could have Doku there instead. And it's created it in a different way. So in that case, you'd have all the defenses moving across. So the right back now goes here, and then that player goes there. That's another way to fit in... that is another way to fit in the wingers into the shape. Not everyone has to play all of the time, obviously. I feel like I'm losing my voice, goodness me. So that would be a potential nice way to get Savio into the side. What we must not do is get Foden or Cherki at right winger on ball. That cannot happen. If that happens, then it is a failure of their traits. They should actually not be playing rather than playing on the right wing on ball. I would rather Cherki and Foden just simply not play than be played out at right wing. That's the problem. Yeah, Southak, in this case, maybe that right back's a Kanji. Maybe it's Kusanov, even though I don't like him right back off ball. Maybe that's Kusanov, if he can get better defending off ball at right back. So it would be someone very different, yes. This is why I think it's important to actually get 3 fullbacks this summer. Nori, an attacking right back, and maybe a more versatile fullback who can also fill in at centre back, perhaps. I don't know. So this is another solution to do it. Now, this lends itself very nicely to playing a box. Now, City could actually set up like this. with a 3-2-2-3, which is exactly how we won the treble. Well, it's not really. It's not really, to be fair, because it's not the centre-back going into midfield. But this would also potentially work. Once again, the problem now is that Marmoush isn't here. I don't really want Marmoush in a box midfield. I'm just trying to illustrate what City could do to maybe get the wide players in as well. How else could this work? If Gvardiol can learn how to do the Stones roll, is that actually of benefit, though? If I push Gvardiol up, what would that achieve? What would that accomplish? Not much. You'd have to get a more defensive left back. You'd push Gvardiol up. And then you'd maybe do that. No, that doesn't really work, because then Marmoush is... Because this would have to be a more defensive... That would have to be Ake, wouldn't it? And he's not really going to push up to overlap. No, never mind. I don't like that. I don't like that. No, I think that's a bit stinky. Scrap that, guys. Scrap that. I don't want Marmoush holding that touchline with Ake being his overlapping option. Fenway doesn't even want him in the Stones role. Gvardiol inverted against Madrid at the Etihad. Yeah. But we didn't have Marmoush then. Now this would work if you are just like a natural winger, to be fair. So what have we got here? Do I have too many players here now? No, I don't. So if you did that and played Savio, that would work. To be fair, that could work. It's not ideal, but that's a way. If you wanted to get both wingers into the side, that's a potential way to do it. I personally do not really want Doku and Savio to be starting that many games together. I think that we are in a current state where neither of them are ready to properly start consistently and win us the title. I think that right now the best City lineup actually doesn't have either of them in it, because Marmoush, Foden, and Shirky are better players. I know he's not a centre-back, he's just a placeholder. And I actually think that maximum one of them should be playing at a time, Savio and Doku. That's where I'm at with them. Great players, obviously, but when you got, as I say, when you got players like Marmoush and Foden and Shirky, who, as I say, are better players than them, it becomes a bit of a concern. But there'll be some games where you don't want, like if Nori, for example, gets injured, or you need to rest him, maybe you want to play Ake there, in which case you'll need a natural left winger rather than Marmoush there. If Nori doesn't play, maybe you also don't play Marmoush and you play Ake Doku instead. That would make a bit more sense. So again, it's all about rotation and having options available. The good news is we have a lot of options if we sign both of these players. If we sign all of these players, then that's a very good thing. But for right now, I don't think they should be starting. So we've done the box midfield. We've done a 3-1 JS with Rodri as a single pivot. What other potential shapes might we like to have a look at, chaps? Let me know. Because again, the key is we want to get Marmoush into central areas. Ideally, I would want to get Foden into the left half space, but I don't mind him playing in the right half space either. Or just in the middle, whatever. And Shirky, we just need to give him the centre, wherever it is. Doesn't really matter if it's left of centre, right of centre. He'll basically play the exact same way. Or centre of centre. If Haaland's injured... Okay, so a non-Haaland shape. Well, Marmoush would have to play. Foden would probably have to play. Foden and Shirky in the same side we've had for most of these setups. We've already done the 4-2-2-2 Fenway. We've already looked at that. The Real Madrid home formation with two inverting fullbacks. Oh, okay. So we're 2-3. Okay, we'll have a look at that after the Haalandless shape. Where Bob would fit in. He would just replace one of Shirky or Foden. That's all it is really, or maybe even Savio. That's all it would be. So they would just rotate. I'll do the double inversion after. Excuse me. I'll do the double inversion after we've done a Haaland the shape. So if Haaland doesn't play, what does that mean that we do not have? It means that we do not have our main goal scorer. So what does that mean? It means that we need to get our best goal scorers on the pitch. Okay, so how does that translate? Okay, so definitely that's fine. Reinders is a goal threat. He actually does score a lot of goals. We need him in the side. Cherki is a goal threat. We need him in the side. Foden is a goal threat. We need him in the side. So where does that leave us in respect of how many players we have? I need one more player. So what would be the best way to do it? Probably having a runner in behind. Well, that's Marmoush, isn't it? I think the best solution is probably to play Foden at false 9, because I still think he's our best false 9 player. What I would then do is I would have Marmoush making runs off him. So Cherki's my primary creator in this sort of setup. I'd probably still would have Aït-Nouri and the right back holding the width. I'd probably would just replicate what we did without Haaland this year, which was the 4-2-2. I'm missing a player though, aren't I? In that instance, what would I like to see? Probably, maybe like Doku. Where's Doku? So maybe Doku there, or maybe even Savio. So you could have Savio pushing up. Then the right back doesn't necessarily have to do that. So what have we created here? We've created a 2. My God, the right back could invert. A cheeky little 2-3-5. A cheeky little 2-3-5, guys. With the fullback inverting into the midfield. Or you could have Aït-Nouri doing the same on the other side, if you prefer. That might be nice. Big up to JS, thank you for your super chat, mate. Providing both centre-backs can split wide, does a midfield of Rodri, Nico, Reinders work with Rodri dropping between the centre-backs in? Build. Yeah, 100%. And you could definitely have that as a midfield if you wanted to be more cautious. I don't know, let's say there's like a big game at the Emirates or the Bernabeu or Anfield, and you're concerned that you're concerned about like fielding Cherki, or you're concerned about fielding like Foden, whoever. You could definitely have that as a more stable midfield 3. It's a bit conservative in my view, a little bit conservative, but I don't dislike it, and it could definitely work 100%. I say maybe for like bigger games where you want to be more defensively solid and the focus is on not losing, that could definitely be a thing. Here's a fortune for you as well, JS. Again, thank you so much for your generous super chat. Take control of your life rather than letting things happen just like that. Okay. There you go. For Aït-Nouri in the midfield, well, Aït-Nouri is technical enough to invert, so you could do that maybe. In that case, you might want Gibbs White in the side, and then you could play Doku. But look at all the options. So if I want to play Doku instead, well, maybe I could have Aït-Nouri inverting, and now all of a sudden my right back pushes up. That could work without Haaland. Once again, if you want to have Marmoush leading the line, you could do that. If whatever reason, you could have Cherki false 9 and do that if you prefer. I think the key is when you are playing a Haalandless system is you basically want lots of players who are capable of rotating with one another. So what might be the best thing to do, I wouldn't really trust Marmoush's first touch as a false 9, is that you can just simply rotate them throughout a game to keep the opponent guessing. That could definitely work. Best £5 I've ever spent. Hopefully that was useful, JS. Hopefully you liked that. Yeah, so that could be a potential Haalandless system. Now, someone asked if we win 2-1 at the Etihad and we need to go to the Bernabeu, we'd play that with Nico, Roger, Reinders. Yeah, exactly. Why not? That could absolutely work. Definitely. It wouldn't be my first port of call, and again, it would be something that I'd only go to if we wanted to focus on being defensively solid. And guys, if I was a manager, I'm an attacking manager. I want to be scoring goals and entertaining fans and winning games, not focusing on not losing. I think that's a loser mentality, to focus on not losing. We're Man City. We're Pep Guardiola's Man City. We focus on winning and attacking and having the ball. None of this, were we defensively solid enough? Fuck that, yeah? I mean, yes, we are defensively solid anyway. Of course, we do need that. But attack, yeah? With reason, within reason. Of course. Now, you guys asked for a double inverted shape as well, didn't you? So how might that look? Let's say, therefore, that you'd go 2-3. Now, this is where it gets tricky because you cannot play... I don't even think you can... Well, Haaland would have to play. I don't even think you can play 3 of these 4. You can't play Foden, Marmoush, Rangers, Cherki. Yeah, Musty, but we're also very good going forwards. You see what I mean? Just because we were defensively solid, it didn't detract from the fact that we scored bare goals. Now, you can't play... I don't even think you can play 3 of these 4 unless you want to play Foden and Cherki out wide, and I'm not doing that shit. So let's just put them here for a second. I think you're going to have to sacrifice both Marmoush and Foden, or Marmoush and Cherki. Haaland's in there. We need another midfielder. This is where Rangers would be a bit more advanced, perhaps. Maybe play like Cherki or Foden, one of those two. I'll pop in Cherki for now. 2, 3, and this is where your width. This is where you will need wingers. Where's Doku? This is where you... no, you don't necessarily. No, you don't. Okay, on paper, you need wingers. However, it depends on who this is. Because I was going to say that you need a wingers because otherwise, if you pop like Marmoush here, he's going to be doing touchline shifts. But Nori's going to be providing an overlap / underlap and supporting Marmoush because that's his inclination. So it's not necessarily a problem there. That could actually work. I wouldn't love it, but it could technically work. Naturally, it would be better if it was just Doku, but once again, there is a world where Marmoush or Foden or whoever could start there, and then the fullback comes across and either unders or overs and provides that width there. So Marmoush isn't just, out here hugging the touchline all day. The right back is Jonathan Stones. So maybe that could work, but more naturally, it probably would work like that. I'm not a big fan of double inverting fullbacks. I won't lie to you. I'm not a big fan of those. We've never really got much joy doing that across a season anyway. It's what Ange does now, like Ange's setups, so I don't know. I'm not saying it can't work. I just don't like it personally. Yeah, I'd rather a player like Nori, I'd rather just go out wide. I'd rather my fullback just play as a fullback rather than tuck in. But this would also work if you want to get Rico Lewis into the side. That could be Rico Lewis in this instance. If you got Cambiasso and played him at left back, for example, he that could work for him there as well. Sorry, that could work for him at right back because he can do that. The good news is there are options. This is the thing. I want to leave the inverting defense in the past. We won the treble with it. Leave it to that season. Yeah, I'm sort of inclined to agree. I think that what Pep did that year was for a very specific use case. We didn't once Cancelo left, we didn't really have any attacking options at fullback. We had Kyle Walker, but he was sort of on his way out from an offensive perspective. He was at that point he was just a defensive demon 1v1. Yeah, my brain has sort of moved past the idea of doing that. I'd rather just like get a fullback and push them up to the wings if they're good enough to do that anyway. You need the right fullbacks, of course, but I think we can do that. So that's an option as well. Wouldn't be my first choice, but it could happen. It could happen. Do you guys want to see what my first choice... I mean, you guys will have already seen it on Twitter, but do you want me to show you what I would like in my dream world? It's not going to happen, but would you like to see what I would do? Let me know. If you don't care, and you want to do a different shape, let me know. Wait, do a 3-5-2 with wing backs. 3-5-2. We're not going to play 3-5-2, are we? We're not going to play with 2 strikers out and out. Surely not. Although I did say we could technically do a 4-2-2. So what, a 3-5-2? The back three shapes become a lot trickier if we're talking about moving on to fullbacks, like their actual fullbacks. The reason why back 3 on ball works is because when you have a player like Ben White or a Kanji who are able to tuck into centre back, then it works. So how would it work? So let's just do this: a 3-2-5. Do you say with attacking wing backs or something? It's not going to work. You can't do a 3-2-5 with attacking wing backs because I'm running out of defenders. Unless you drop a defender into the back three, it doesn't work. You could play one attacking fullback, but not two, because I can't push my right back here and also have him at the back. So you can only do one. In which case you would need a winger on the pitch. 3-2. Sorry, did you say 3-5-2? 3-5-2. That, I guess. Is that what you're after? One second, guys. I'm thinking. No, this doesn't work. Doesn't work off ball. No. I like the on ball shape. That doesn't work off ball, I'm afraid. Sorry, guys. Right, what was I doing? I was doing my shape, wasn't I? It just doesn't work off ball. That's the problem. You got the back four. The question goes back to what we were discussing with Shirky off ball, because you'd have either Shirky at left wing off ball, which I don't think he's ever played, or you've got Shirky leading the press, and I've touched on why I wouldn't like that. It would work like that, because Foden can go to the left off ball. That's not a problem. You can have Marmoush and Haaland leading the press. It doesn't work with Shirky, though. It would work with Foden, so okay, I take it back. Maybe it is a potential shape that could work. Wouldn't be my first choice, though. Anyway, this is what I would do. What I would like to see is more trust and faith put into our off-ball midfield. Now, what do I mean by that? City are a side who dominate with the ball. They always have possession. They don't need to do as much defending as other sides because they have the ball all the time and they press intently. They don't need to worry too much about that. What I would like to see, and it's basically what I started with. Brozona, thank you for your super chat, mate. Don't forget about Bob. Think Pep will prefer him. But to who? Bob will play, but he's going to be playing out on the right wing, surely. He was supposed to be our starting right winger this year. Bob is not going to play in the centre next season over Shirky or Foden or Marmoush. I'd be amazed if that happened. Bob is more likely to play out on the right, probably with Savio, maybe sometimes in the centre. But I don't think he's going to get that many minutes in the centre. Thank you so much for your super chat, though, Brozona. Big up to you. Yeah, what do I mean by that? Now, we ran... Again, I'm going back to the Bournemouth game because there's other examples of this, but against Bournemouth, our midfield three was Gundogan, Kovacic, and Bernardo Silva. Now, that worked that day. It didn't work against United. It did work that day, though, because of all the players around them. Now, I cannot be convinced that a midfield three of Rodri, Reinders, Foden is not a lot more defensively stable than that midfield three. Would anyone like to contest that, first of all? I cannot be convinced that a midfield three of Kova, Gundo, Bernardo is better than a midfield three of Rodri, Foden, Reinders. I'm not convinced of that. I refuse to accept that as a concept, that the former is stronger defensively than the latter. I'm not having it. I actually refuse to believe that. Maybe you can say I'm in denial. I just don't see what justification we can have to say that the Unk midfield, which we know is a physical liability, is better than that one. Certain with the addition of Rodri. It doesn't make sense to me. This is my ideal scenario. This is my ideal team. This isn't about what's realistic. This is about what I think I would like to see. I want to see that midfield three. JS, that's what I want as well. I want my midfield three to be this. Now you can swap Foden and Reinders if you want, because Reinders has played more so out at left midfield. That's what I want my midfield three to be. And this would be my team. I'm running 4-3-3 so that I can cover the weakness of Shirky, which I outlined earlier. Weakness is a harsh word. Not liability. Potential lack of intensity in the press. That's what I'm covering here. That's what I'm allowing for here. I know that front three is going to work because a front three of Marmoush, Haaland, Kevin De Bruyne worked very well. An aging Kevin De Bruyne. I know that front three is going to work. I know that midfield three can work. Because Kova, Gundo, Bernardo worked. That front three is better than the other front three. That midfield three is better than that other midfield three. That back four is better than that other back four. This is a far better side than what we saw against Bournemouth, and yet that Bournemouth game is actually one of my favourite performances all season, to be honest with you. That and the Newcastle game are my two favourite performances this season. Eddie, on ball, off ball. On ball, off ball. Don't worry about it. He'll play in the he'll play in the middle on ball. That's all that matters. He's not right wing. On ball, off ball, Eddie. On ball, off ball. It's fine. Don't worry about it. This works. It gets every single player into their best positions. Once again, do not try to tell me that midfield three, off ball, is weaker than Kova, Gundo, Bernardo. It isn't. It isn't. You've got the best defensive midfielder in the world in Rodri. You have very good off-ball workers in Foden and Reinders as well. Whatever people may think of them off-ball, they are actually very good off-ball, and they are very good in respect to their pressing, and they are very intent, and they will always run, and they will always cover ground as well. I don't know what Reinders' off-ball numbers are. I know from watching him, but sadly off-ball data is incredibly valuable and private. However, whenever off-ball data is provided for City games, Foden's always at the top of that list. So I know he's a very good off-ball worker. That, for me, works. Now, people are saying swap Foden and Reinders, and I agree that maybe that might be the better situation for a Reinders POV. However, this is why I want it to be like that, because of how City go into on-ball work now. What I want to have... So basically, I want Foden to be my Gundogan from that Bournemouth game, and I want Reinders to be my Bernardo. Now, you can swap them round again. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go into why I think it would make more sense for it to be this way round. So on ball, what happens, big up to you, Herbal, is that the fullbacks still push up. So this is back to basically where we started from the top of the show. This allows Foden... Sorry, this allows Foden. This allows Marmoush to tuck inside. It allows Shirky to tuck inside. And what really happens is it's almost... like, it's not quite a 2-3-5, because it wasn't really a full-on 2-3-5 when we played Bournemouth. Foden, who was Gundogan, was a bit more advanced. You had Bernardo and Kova as the slightly deeper players. So this player here, who was Gundogan, was able to get higher up the pitch. The player here, who was Bernardo, had a bit more defensive, box-to-box burden, whatever you want to say, whatever term you want to say. This is what I don't think this is what we're going to do. I don't think this is what we're going to do at all. But this is my preferred team. I've got Shirky as one of the 8-10s. I have Marmoush able to make runs in behind and play in that zone that he loves to play in, and be that second striker to Haaland's gravity. I've got Nori allowing Marmoush to do that. I've got my right back allowing Shirky to come in and play as that 10. If I really wanted to, this player here, whether it's Reinders or Foden, can come in to assist Shirky. So I've got two 8-10s going on. I've got an incredibly stable base of Rodri and Reinders. Reinders is also allowed to come alongside to support Shirky and potentially crash that box and be a goal threat from outside it as well. This is my team. Actually, I tell a lie. Tactically speaking and profile-wise, this is my team. Marmoush, not a left winger, mate. KB the GOAT. There is no way you are a real human being. How many times have I explained that there's a difference between on-ball and off-ball. There is no... This is 10 out of 10 rage bait. There is no way you can still misunderstand me. There is surely no way. I've been speaking for an hour, 16 minutes, and 14 seconds. There is no way that you are still unable to comprehend the difference between on-ball and off-ball. I refuse to accept that. I refuse to accept it. Surely not. Surely not. Anyway. So that's what I would do. Humongous news that I would love. Tell me more. Tell me more. That's, again, now I accept maybe having Kusanov in here is massively, massively unrealistic. But what I do accept is that City will always be vulnerable on transition and to the counter-attack. That's why I would like Kusanov to be in there, because of his pace and because of his wonderful recovery abilities. I accept that there is a bit of an off-ball a rest defense weakness here. However, I'm willing to... It's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, as Lord Footquad would say. I think it's worth the trade-off. Risk versus reward. I want to... Again, I'm not a coach. I'm not nearly intelligent enough to be one. If I were a coach, I would be emphasizing attack and on-ball work... and on-ball attacking work, rather than being too preoccupied with rest defense. That's what I would be up to. That's what I would be doing. And again, if this worked against Bournemouth in that game, it's only Bournemouth, they're still a very good side, and we've got better players going on as well, why can't it work? Answer, it can work. That being said, I don't think Pep will do this. I don't think he'd be brave enough to do this, to be honest. That sounds really mean. I don't think he'd be brave enough to do this, but I do think that it would work. How does that work when we're camped in the opposition half? What does that mean, Sean? Sorry. What does that mean? For breaking down a low block, I think this formation works great. Holland occupies defense centre-backs while Marmoush, Shirky and Foden all play in the half spaces. Yeah. Yeah, this is ideal for sides who've got no interest in attacking us. This is the definition of ideal. You can't congest the centre, because if you do that, then the width from Aitnori and whoever the right back is going to fuck you over. Even if you do congest the centre, look at who I have. Look at the level of technical quality and ability here. We're not dealing with I'm sorry to say, we're not dealing with Kovacic anymore. We're not dealing with Nunes. We're not dealing with Gundogan, etc. We are dealing with some of the best technical players in the world here. Players with an unbelievable first touch, players with unbelievable movement and intelligence and creative output and abilities and goal threat as well. This is a low block's worst nightmare, guys. Can you imagine having to come up against a side where you think, oh, we'll congest the centre. Oh, well, you're left at the mercy of Aitnori and whoever the right back is. Hopefully a good one. Oh, well, I guess we'll deal with the wide options there. Oh, right, yeah, okay, great. Good luck dealing with Marmoush running in behind. The first touches of Foden and Shirky and the creativity therein. The late runs of Reinders also. And the goal threat as well, guys. Reinders, Foden, Marmoush, Shirky. And I've not even touched on that big number 9 up top, who's also quite a good goal scorer. There is a ridiculous amount of goals in this team. Rodri, Reinders, Foden, Shirky, Marmoush, even Aitnori. These are all goal scorers and shooters. Haaland is a goal scorer and a shooter. Even my centre-back, Gvardiol, is a goal scorer and a shooter. Mad. Madness. Again, and you've got players who want to make runs in behind, like Marmoush. You've got players who want it to feet, like Foden and Shirky. You've got players who can crash the box, like Reinders and Foden and Marmoush, of course. You've got players who can be a goal threat outside the box, Rodri, Foden, Marmoush. Everything you could want offensively is there, and it works. Even Ederson's a threat, and it works off ball as well. And it's off, and from an off ball perspective, it is also solid. It's also solid. That's my team. That's what I would run. And if you want to swap another place, like, if we got Morgan Gibbs White, where would he play? Well, you could play him instead of, Foden or Cherki or Reinders if you wanted. He's versatile. That's the thing. Where would Nico play? Well, just play him instead of Rodri or Reinders. Where would Bob play? Just play him instead of Cherki or Foden. Where would Doku and Savio play? Well, then you'd invert a fullback and then get Savio out on the wings or Doku out on the wings. I'm pretty... Liam, I'm pretty convinced that if we did this, we would win the league. Not comfortably by any means, but I would be very, very happy and very confident to predict City to win the title. Chelsea signing your nan, that's crazy. Because again, it also works defensively. Now, you might say, Ait Nouri, isn't he a bit of a defensive liability? First of all, that's massively overblown. The amount of defending that an Ait Nouri is going to have to do for City is tiny compared to the amount of defending that he did for Wolves. Because City have the ball for far more time than Wolves. So far less defending is going to have to be being done. So immediately, his workload is significantly reduced. And it's the same thing with all of our players in general. Even against the best sides, City have the majority of the ball for the majority of the time. So I'm not overly concerned about a potential off-ball weakness once it's past the first phase of pressing, because I actually think it's solid anyway. We saw midfield, not a lot, but we saw some midfields last season where Kova, Gundo, Bernardo was able to be solid, thanks to the fullbacks pushing up. This is even more solid than that. There's no reason why it can't work. And again, I know people were saying, just swap Reigns and Foden. Again, that can work. It's not a problem. Just the reason why I personally wouldn't like that as much is because now all of a sudden I need this player to be more of like what I would want Reinders to be doing. And also, I prefer to have Foden in the in more of like the left half space areas, because I believe whilst he's less of a goal threat on that left side, he's actually a better player overall. But once again, you could have it like that if you want. And also, because I'm trying to sort of do a Spain thing here, where I've got a left-footed, I've got Rodri, and to the left of him is a left-footed midfielder, who was Ruiz. I've got a right-footed midfielder to the right of him, which is Pedri. Now Reinders is right-footed. I've got a right-footed midfielder to the right of him, i.e., Pedri. I've got a right-footed right back. I've got a left-footed left back. I've got a left-footed right winger in massive quotes. I've got a right-footed left winger. Again, winger in massive quotes there. This is basically Spain. Spain, you get me? It's not, but that's also what I'm sort of trying to half replicate. It looks complicated, but it's actually quite simple. Again, it's about going to the basics and getting your best players in their best positions and profiling them correctly so they can succeed. Why isn't Bob on my bench? I must have missed that. Crazy. But what would Pep do? Well, we've already touched on that, Adam. Like, this whole stream's been, what could Pep do and that sort of thing. So everything before this. We'll win the World Cup, absolutely. So that is how I would set it up personally. So once again, think about what Gundogan was doing against Bournemouth. That's the role I'm giving to Foden. Think about what Bernardo was doing. That's the role I'm giving to Reinders. What was De Bruyne doing? That's the role I'm giving to Cherki, etc., etc. Bob's literally there, guys. He's literally there. Pim. Big up to you, by the way, Pim. Yeah. What City have lacked of late... Oh, sorry. Al Hilal have made contact with Ederson's camp after Fernandes' decision to reject their bid. Atalanta mid... Oh, the Atalanta... Oh, thank God. I thought you were saying Ederson like the keeper. Oh, thank God. Now I don't have to have stupid bullshit Ederson connections and explain to people why he's actually not that good at football. Actually, that's a lie. He is good. Yeah, that is good news for us. I can't believe we're actually linked with that fraud. He's not a fraud. He's a good player, but that's about where it ends. He's good. Yeah, the main issue, because lots of people have been saying, I want to shoot off in a moment, by the way, guys. I want to keep these from 2 to 3:30 to have some consistency, yeah? There's been this interesting idea, which I don't agree with, that Pep's style of play is done, and that you need to move on to a totally different way of playing. That now the Premier League is all about physical monsters and giants. Now, physicality has always been an element of the Premier League and football. But we're going way too far the other way. Are you really telling, and this is an extreme example, but are you really telling me that a midfield three of Busquets, Xavi, Iniesta struggles in the modern Premier League era? That's an extreme example, but do we really think that they are going to struggle? No. Why? Because when you get to such a technical level of that degree, it is almost meaningless. Now, again, it isn't meaningless because you still need some defensive work there, i.e. Busquets, i.e. Rodri, but PSG have just won the Champions League final. Now, who is their P&P merchants? Now, who is their absolute behemoth giant 6 foot plus midfielder who is also a ridiculous space eater? They don't have one. It's Neves, it's Ruiz, and it's Vitinha. Why were they able to win the treble this year? Because the technical flaw of that midfield is mental. That is why. You can hardly get the ball off them. That is why. And they were able to win the Champions League final with that midfield. Now, I'm not saying that midfield is physically frail because there's a lot of endeavour and effort and running in that midfield. I'm just highlighting that as an example. Spartacus, we're gonna fall out. As an example, that midfield worked. This midfield is actually, and again, I'm using it as an example. Why did that midfield work? Why did the midfield Busquets, Xavi, and Iniesta work, etc., etc.? Because the technical flaw of those players is off the charts. That's what City have lost this year with players like Kova, Bernardo, Nunes, etc., etc., etc. They weren't technically good enough. They also weren't physically good enough, but they weren't technically good enough either. This midfield is physically stronger. Reinders is not a weak player. Rodri is not a weak player. For all the criticism that I've given you, like Foden and Cherki, and like trying to mitigate off-ball work, they are not fundamentally weak players either. We had David Silva and Kevin De Bruyne in the midfield. It can work if the technical level is good enough. And when you combine that with Rodri, who is the best defensive midfielder in the world, some might say the best midfielder in the world. When you have that as your anchor, I don't consider that to be a problem. So the technical level is through the roof, and there's also still a good physical platforming there as well, with Rodri and Reinders, or Rodri and Nico, or Rodri and Gibbs-White, before we even need to touch on the likes of Foden, Marmoush and Cherki, who provide that technical level. That's what City have been missing this year. Our players simply have not been technically good enough on the ball. The first touch has not been good enough. The dribbling has not been good enough. It's because we didn't have the players for it. If Pep has these players, like Foden, when he's on it, and Cherki, when he's on it, maybe even Echeverry, maybe Marmoush, it's a thing. You get me? That's the stream, guys. Really hope you enjoyed it. Apologies I couldn't get my touch screen working. That'll be a task that I need to do later today. I'm live on... I will be live again today, by the way. I'm going to be live on Twitch tonight at around 7 p.m. We are doing Red Dead Redemption 2. Click that link. If you enjoy my content, then you'll enjoy me playing Red Dead Redemption 2 as well. It's more chilled out vibe. It's just a bit of fun. And I bought a new graphics card to make it work. So come over, yeah? Come over. The Citizen, that's Cap. I literally saw him do it a couple of years ago. You're wrong. So click that link. Come over to the Twitch, yeah? Because we're doing Red Dead Redemption 2 tonight. As I say, at around 7 p.m. Hello and goodbye, hello, Dave. Yeah, so click that link. As I say, where is it? There it is. Click the link. Come over. If you want to talk about City, you can do. If you want to talk about whatever, you can do. And it's going to be a lovely time had by all. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much to my super chatters and people who rejoin the Ultras Club. If you want to support the channel, click the join button. There'll be an exclusive video going up later this week, which will be a scout report analysis on either Rangers or Cherki, one of those two. Big up to Cartel for following the Twitch. More people I need like PNG. Cartel. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you tonight on the Twitch for Red Dead Redemption 2. Goodbye.